across the road, built in 1890s, and it was all wood. And we'd expanded as far as we could over there, which is good for me, or I would still be here.
That's right.
We sit right on top, right there is the Kentucky River. You go out there 50 yards and jump 350 feet, you'll hit the river. And over there, we was right on the river and the US 62, so we expanded as far as we could. We have a lot of property here, so we decided to come up here and build complete new facilities. We're building a new bottling facilities over there.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
And then we're going to build a new visitor center right over here. So
Is that going to be on the old side?
no, it's going to be on this side.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And everything's really growing, so we can't ask for anything better than that. The bourbon
right.
business is doing well now.
That's right.
So, I'm doing all the talking. Y'all have any questions?
Well, what's it like to take a 1900s? What was the year the distillery was originally built?
Around 1890s.
So what's it like to take an 1890s operation and completely redo it?
Well, really the biggest difference is it just got larger. When I come, we had 12 fermenters, 15,000 gallons. Now we have 23, 30,000 gallons. We had 4 storage buildings. Now we got 26 that holds 20,000 barrels each. So say it's good for me. I wouldn't still be here if we'd been going the other way.
How do you scale from the one size distillery to the next and keep it being the same?
Well, everything, the base is the same except just growing larger and everything.
So nothing in the processing has changed?
No, nothing in the process. Same size still that we had. The big difference is we just got more fermenters, bigger fermenters, but the still's the same still, same doubler. Everything's the same. Same formula. We make our own yeast here. We have our own yeast that we make every day. And all I can tell you, I know it's 58 years old. It was here when I got here, and we're still using the same yeast codes. Water, grain, yeast, everything plays a very important factor in making good bourbon. Now, I can't say one's better than the other, but you got to have all the ingredients to make good bourbon. And we're still making bourbon the same way as it did when I come here in 1954. We haven't changed our formula or nothing. And we only have 2 formulas here. We have our bourbon formula and our rye formula. We've stayed the same ever since I've been here. We haven't changed a thing.
Last time I was here, you introduced me to your rye. I've become a big fan.
Too big a fan.
Are you telling me to quit drinking it?
No, well, you're going to have to. You won't hardly find any of ours right now.
That's true. It
This
is hard
is
to come
something
by.
we didn't know. You know, everything we do, our rye is 6, 7 years old. So we got to know well in advance. And back 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, us and Beam was about the only 2s making rye whiskey, just a little each year. And the young mixologists, rye is excellent in mixed drinks. It's more spicy, more peppery, more earthy. Young mixologists start a lot of cocktails nowadays, and the rye market just don't like that. And nobody has any rye now. We've been on allocations for 3 years now.
Oh, wow.
2 years. We'll be a little better next year. We should be called back up in 2014, but we got to plan well in advance.
Well, how do you feel now you put out Russell 6 quite a while ago.
Right.
Yeah,
I
so.
wish you told me 6, 7 years ago. We're completely out of it. Everything's bottled for this year. We'll have some more next spring.
Could you ever imagine that it would take off the way it is?
No. If I'd managed that, we'd have had plenty of it.
Made more of it.
So how about the 101 rye? I know that came off. What, are we going to see that again anytime?
Eventually, we hope. Again, that's the same problem there. I'm not going to compromise. You know, we can put out a less aged rye, and they say, you know me, I'm hard-headed and old-fashioned. We're not going to compromise just to get the product on the market. The 81 rye is excellent rye, but we just don't have enough.
Yeah, can't sell it at 101, otherwise you'd be too short.
Well, it's not old enough.
Ah.
We might have a little next year.
So I mean, you of all the guys who are making bourbon right now, you're one of the few who's seen the rise and fall and such. how's that experience been?
Well, rye's never, since I've been in business, rye's never been a real big market. And it's always funny to me, that was the first whiskey made in America, rye whiskey.
Oh, it was right.
The East Coast was dominant rye grain, and that's what they made. They got to Kentucky, corn was the dominant grain, and they started making corn whiskey, they called it, and then it ended up as bourbon. But and when I first started, all of our rye was made in Maryland. Back then, if rye wasn't made in Pennsylvania or Maryland, it wasn't rye whiskey. Same way with bourbon. You make bourbon any place in America. But if it doesn't say Kentucky bourbon, people doesn't think it's bourbon. And that's the way it was for rye for many years. Now it's no distilleries operating. Well, there's some micro distilleries starting to back up, but all the rye, us and Beam, all of us been making rye here in Kentucky for probably 20 years.
When was the takeoff point? Can you point to a point where you started looking at your rye numbers and said, what's going on here?
3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4. And the young mixologists, cocktails is coming back strong again. Y'all are young, and I kind of laugh about this now. In my younger days, that was the big drinks, the Manhattans, old fashions, and all. And then we left all of them, went to other things. Now we're back. Same thing again.
There was a time when Wild Turkey kind of had a bad boy image. It kind of was, you knock back Wild Turkey as a sign of bravado, and yet Wild Turkey is perhaps one of it's bold, but it's probably the easiest to sip in terms of
It's what we call the way bourbon was originally made. We're still doing it the same way, and I'm fortunate. Back in the 60s and 70s, the vodkas and gins was growing strong back then. And a lot of bourbon companies started lighting up their bourbon to compete with them. And I wouldn't do it. If it had went over, you wouldn't be talking to me today. I'd probably be out here digging ditches someplace. But I wouldn't make it. And it paid off for us. We continued to grow, not a whole lot, but in the last 15 years or so, bourbon has really been going up. That's the reason we got this new facility. So it's been really growing.
What would you attribute the explosion in bourbon? I mean, there's so many spirits out there and so many different kinds of whiskey. I mean, could have easily been Scotch whiskey that.
Yeah, well, Scotch still does well. But again, I see this. Everything goes around, comes around again. Back in the earliest, bourbon was strong. Then bourbon, when Prohibition come in, hurt the bourbon business. And after Prohibition, then we had World War II and down the line, and it's really took off now. So
how do you drink your bourbon?
I drink mine neat or on the rocks, but you drink it any way you like it. I'm gonna tell you that's the only way to drink it. But me personally, I like in the wintertime at home. I like to sit around at night in what I call a brandy type glass with a big bulb, narrow nose. Pour it out and sit and sip on watching television or reading a book or something like that. And in this hot weather, I like it chilled a little bit. Fact is, at home it'd be in the freezer, so I won't have to put ice in it.
So what's it like to be watching the next generation, like the Rob Samuels of the world and Fred Nose, be taking over the spots of the guys that you work shoulder to shoulder with?
Yeah, well, we all grow old, Most people don't stay around as long as I've been around, but I got one buddy. Well, 2, 3 of us are still working. Jim Rutledge at Four Roses, and Parker Bean at Heaven Hill, and then Elmer Lee at Buffalo Trace. Elmer, we celebrated his 93rd birthday in August, and he's still around. But we all get old. Somebody's going to take our place one of these days, and I'm fortunate here that my son will be taking my place. He's kind of new in the business. He's only been here 32 years.
How many years have you been?
58. My September 10th was 58 years. And another fortunate thing, you never push your children into anything. Eddie was going to college, playing football. Come to work here one summer, decided he liked it, and stayed on. Been here ever since. Went to school at nights and during the daytime got his education. And now his son's going to University of Kentucky. One of them, both of them are, but one of them took interest. And this summer he worked as a tour guide here. And he's working weekends as a tour guide. So I hope that he'll go. But you know, I have another son and another daughter, and they never was interested in it. But if you push your children into something, they don't like it. The whole family's in problems in it, so they have to make that decision for themselves. But no, Parker Bean and I've been close for years. Booker Knoll was a close friend of mine, and Bill's daddy. This is the third generation of the Samuels. Bill's daddy, and Bill, and then Rob now, and all of our sons, Craig Bean, Freddie, or Fred as he wants to be known. I still call him Freddie. And Craig Bean, Freddie, and Rob, all of our children are close friends, so they'll be around for a long time too.
What's your hope for that generation of Kentucky distillers?
Well, keep on making good bourbon. Don't compromise. That's what I've always said. You know, I can go back and I know some of the bourbons was big in my younger days. You can't hardly find anymore. They tried to change, meet with the times, and just don't seem to work in our business. The first time in my lifetime here, we changed our labels and all here about 3 or 4 years ago to the new package that we're using now. We still use the cork like the bottle of bourbon was originally bottled. We still put the cork in the bottle. We're putting like the old federal strip stamp that used to be on the bottle. Say, I'm hard-headed and old-fashioned.
So what would you say makes Wild Turkey Wild Turkey? I mean, if you're sitting here, you got 5 different bourbons in front of us. You got Wild Turkey. What makes it different?
The flavor, the body, the taste. It's still, like you said, many years. It's still considered that way, you know, the kicking chicken.
Kicking chicken.
That's what a lot of people says. But people's wanting that flavor. They want that taste. If you're going to mix, you know, Wild Turkey's not a big mix drink. People's drink it neat or on the rocks, or maybe mix it a little bit, but most of it's, and we go from bottom to top, from all category of people. We cover all people drinks Wild Turkey. And I guess we're about one of the last ones that's still left, and maybe they're smarter than we are. We don't put out anything but Wild Turkey. We don't have any other brands. You can see them, we have the 101. That's all we had up until the 1980s. The 101's all we had on the market.
Just till the 80s.
And then we come out with, actually when they started lowering proofs a little bit, we come out with 86.8 originally. And people don't realize this, but we come out with American Honey Liqueur in 1980.
Was that the first honey liqueur?
It was called Wild Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And now everybody's trying to copy it. Everybody's coming out with it, but a lot of people think it's all new. But we changed the package to the American Honey about 7 or 8 years ago, and basically the same thing. The original bottle, it's out there in the cabinet. It's a hexagon-shaped bottle with turkeys all the way around the side, with a big long neck on it. And then we come up with a rare breed. That's our small batch barrel-proof bourbon, straight out of the barrel. And then we had Kentucky Spirit, our single barrel, and then Russell's Reserve. And ever so often we put out a limited edition. The last we had was about 2 years ago, called Tradition. I've got to give you my personal taste. I don't think bourbon, 4 and 5 year old bourbon is not good to me. It hadn't matured enough. Most of your bourbons are 4 and 5 years old. I don't think bourbon really starts maturing to 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12 years old. You get much over 12 or 13, I don't care anything for it. You lose, you know, we have to use a new barrel. You all know the regulations, but you have to use a new barrel. And after 13 or 14 years, you lose that caramel, vanilla, sweetness. The white oak wood becomes a dominant flavor, and I don't like a lot of oaky, woody taste. A lot of people does. You know, if they like the woody taste, they'll like it. But me personally, I don't. And every once in a while, our Tradition was 14 years old. All of ours will average about 8 years old. And when we come out with Tradition, we find a few barrels that we think's aging a little extra special. And what we'll do, our storage buildings are 7 stories tall, metal-clad buildings. A lot of windows we open in the summertime to get to our circulation, close them in the wintertime. But with a few barrels, we can keep tasting them every year, and we can start moving. It's cooler down on the bottom floors. It's hotter in the top, and we can move 150 barrels around to control that woody taste. We can't move 500,000 barrels. That's what we have in inventory right now, about 500,000 barrels. And to me, now if you get into scotches, they got to be older, my
Right.
personal taste, because they're using barrels that already been used 3 or 4 times and things like that.
Now, what do you think between, mash bill is more corn than rye versus, a rye whiskey? Do you think
Right.
that the sweet spots are different between the two?
Oh yes, quite a bit different.
So where do you think the sweet spot is with rye in terms of age?
In age, I
Yeah.
like it between 6 and 8.
Hmm.
I like it. You see, most ours is 6, 7.
Well, I mean, to me, Russell 6 is the measure that you measure rye against.
Right.
I mean, it really.
A lot of people think it's older, they get on that, but to me, that peppery, spicy, earthy taste becomes a dominant flavor. But no, I think between 6 and 8 is best aging for rye whiskey. Some people disagree with it. No, it's got to be older. But
Now, what leads to? I mean, I think one of the things when I think about Wild Turkey is the predominant is this rich mouthfeel. I mean, you got spice. Think spice, rich mouthfeel, but this kind of nice balance of sweetness in there. And what in the process it really intensifies or enhances that for
well,
Wild Turkey?
go back to the same thing. Our formula, we use less corn than most people.
What's
More
the
rye.
percentage? What's the percentage?
What?
What's the percentage? of
What?
corn?
He's not gonna.
And we use more rye and barley malt. They're the more expensive grains.
Mhm.
But the rye and malt gives you a lot more what you're talking about. That spice is coming from the rye. If you're light on rye in your bourbon formula, you're not going to get that.
Mhm.
And it's a funny thing, she'll probably tell you this. In Kentucky, which we're still on prohibition, you probably told them
Heck
this,
yeah.
3/4 of Kentucky's dry.
Yeah.
You never buy at bars, most bars, you'll never hear anybody call for Wild Turkey at a bar in Kentucky.
Why is that?
Give me 101.
Mm.
Well, give me 101. That's our. Now, when I started, all bourbons was bottled at 100 proof, bottled and bond. Wild Turkey was the oddball of the bunch, 101 proof. And they started lowering them down, which now we're down to 80 proof, and that's the lowest we can go, is 80 proof, and be called bourbon. We cannot add anything to bourbon or anything. It's all a natural product. If we add any flavor, color, or anything, it has to be a whiskey. Our liqueur is our 101 bourbon with honey and sweetener and flavors added to it.
Looking back after on such a massive career, do you have, a couple of high points that you look to and you go, this made the journey all worth it?
Well, I can say that every day, especially when I'm out traveling. For many, many years, us in production, but we're production people. We were never out in the field. And our company, 25 years ago or so, decided they wanted me to go out in the field. And different story. When I started going, it was whiskey. It's all the same, whether it's bourbon or whiskey. Everybody thought everything everything was the same. And nowadays, people knows. You got straightbourbon.com, Bourbon's Society, Women Bourbon Society. Now we have a Women's Bourbon Society, and they know everything's going on. If you change this little bit, they know about it right away. Before, it wasn't that, but we've always been known as premium bourbon worldwide ever since they started. We cook it into distillation.
Mm-hmm.
In bourbon, or rye, either one, you can distill up to 160 proof. You can't put it in a barrel over 125. And I use simple terms. You like to eat steak?
Yep.
I like it cooked.
Medium rare.
Why don't you cook it well done?
It's overcooked. It doesn't taste good.
You answered my question. The higher you distill anything, the less flavor you have in it.
Mhm.
So it's costly the way we do it because we're distilling it low proof and putting it in a barrel at low proof. But the higher you distill anything, the less flavor you have in it. We're coming out off the still about 115.
Oh, wow.
We're coming off still about 125, approximately. I'm not gonna tell you the exact.
No, yeah.
And we're putting it in a barrel at around 110.
Mhm.
Or most everybody's putting.
Jimmy, even if you told me the exact recipe, the exact temperature, there's no way I could possibly. It's and I don't think anybody else could either. The Russell 6 it stands on its own as.
Actually, it's 7 years old. We everything we do here, we call it extra summer's aging.
Mm.
We like to go through an extra. If it says 6 on the label, It's went through 7 summers.
7 cycles, yeah, you want it in and out of that barrel.
So instead of 100 proof, it's 101. You're always getting something extra? So you're always getting something extra? Instead of 100 proof, it's 101. Instead of 80 proof, it's 81.
No, actually, if you're aging bourbon properly, this is hard to understand. You know, bourbon will gain proof during the aging process.
Mm-hmm.
The water, and it's hard to believe because you think about alcohol evaporating faster than water. But if you're aging bourbon properly, the water goes out of that barrel and the alcohol strength goes. Our barrel proof bourbons only run at 108 to 100, somewhere between 108 to 112. Because it's when it says barrel proof, you're not allowed to add any water to it.
Mm-hmm.
Our next batch, I think, what we've been looking at is going to come out around 111.1.
Mm-hmm.
So it varies on that. No water added to it. So you can see, and that's 6, 8, 12-year-old bourbons mingled together to a certain taste in a rare breed. You're going to get a little more woody taste in the rare breed because you got 12. That's where the 12-year-old's going now. But you see, it's only 108 to 111, so you know we're distilling, putting in a barrel over. Actually, one of the bourbons on the market now, barrel proof, is 143.
That's Stag, right? Is Stag 143?
You know?
Yeah.
But people say, well, you say you can't put it in a barrel over 125. How can it be 143? The first 2 barrel proofs on the market was Booker's. It runs 124 to 128 in rare breed. And now everybody's getting them. But the first 2 single barrels on the market was Blanton's and Kentucky Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Now everybody has single barrels.
What was the biggest philosophical disagreement you had with another of your peers in terms of bourbon? You know, between...
Are you talking about here or at other?
Yeah, but when you sat down with guys like Booker and such, did you ever have fundamental philosophical differences about...
Some, nothing. We're all close. Was all close. I was with Booker 2 weeks before he passed away.
What would you all drink when you hang out? Did you trade off whose bourbon you were drinking?
It used to be it used to be years ago. We don't do it anymore. But we'd have a little get together maybe once or twice a year, and somebody said, "Bring your own bottle, but you can't drink it."
Okay.
Lasting out, turn out the lights.